Right, in this lesson we're going to learn about the properties of logarithms. So our learning trigger for today is I can use the properties of logarithms to simplify expressions. So the first thing I want you to do is kind of practice a couple things. So before we've been simplifying expressions by kind of solving them and turning them into actual numbers, and then we can combine them. So that's what I want you to do on these numbers 1 through 3. And then in 4 through 7 I want you to evaluate each expression when x equals 3. So here are our properties of logarithms. Now these are the things you're really going to need to know. So my first property is the product property. And product, remember, means multiply. So I know that when I've got log base b of these two terms that are multiplied, they can be variables or they can be actual numbers. I can also write them as an addition problem. Right? Log base b of the first one plus log base b of the second one. I can also work backwards, so if I see I have two different terms being added together with the same base, I can write them as one log. My second property is the quotient property. So I see that if I have two terms that are dividing, I can write them as a subtraction expression. And same thing, if I see two terms that are being subtracted, I can write them as a division or a quotient property. And then my third property is the power property. So I know if I have log base b of m to the x, I can take that exponent and rewrite it out front here as something that's as a term that's multiplying. And also if I see something that's out front being multiplied, I can move that back up into the exponent. So let's look at some examples of this. So here I want to simplify writing these as a single logarithm. So for my first example, I see I have log base 3 of 20 minus log base 3 of 4. Well, so since they have the same base, I know that I can use my quotient property and write them as a division problem, my 20 divided by 4, and I end up with log base 3 of 5. So for part B, I see I have 3 log base 2 of x plus log base 2 of y. Well, I see I can't really do anything yet because I have this 3 out front. But by my power property, I know that I can turn that 3 into an exponent that goes with my x. Now I see that I'm adding these two together, and I know that adding leads me to my product property, so I can go ahead and write them as the product here. So now I have log base 2 of x cubed y. So now I'm going to ask you this critical thinking question. I really want you to think about it before you give me your answer. So we can also take these properties and use them to expand our logarithms. So first I have log base 5 of x divided by y. So here I know I'm going to be using the quotient property. The quotient property tells me that if I've got this base, I can write it as log base 5 of the top one, the numerator, minus log base 5 of the denominator. So that's the expanded form of this first problem. So here I also have log, and I don't have a base, and remember that if I don't see a base, it's log base 10 of 3r to the 4th. So first I want to go ahead and separate my terms. So I've got log of 3 plus log of r to the 4th, but I can still simplify or expand a little bit more. I can take this exponent and through the power property move it out front. So I end up with log of 3 plus 4 log of r. So logarithms are also used to model sound and the intensity of sound and how loud things sound. So the greater the intensity, the louder it is. So our loudness, which is L, is measured in decibels. Okay, and here's the formula that we're going to be using. L equals 10 times log, there's no base, so it's base 10 of I, and I is the intensity of the sound in watts per square meter over I sub 0. And I sub 0 is like the lowest intensity that the human ear can hear. Okay, so that's kind of like our initial point or our beginning point. So let's look at how we're using this. Okay, so a shipping company has started flying cargo planes out of the city airport. Residents have complained that the cargo planes are too loud. Suppose the shipping company hires you to design a way to reduce the intensity of the sound by half. How many decibels would the loudness be decreased? So we have to try and figure out some intensity. So I know I have I sub 1 is our intensity right now, and we're going to give I sub 2 the reduced intensity. So what I want it to be is half as big, right? And L sub 1 is our loudness right now, and L sub 2 is going to be the loudness that it is once we decrease the sound. So I can figure it out, right? I know that my intensity I want it to be half as big as my current intensity. So I can write that as just one equation. So my future intensity is going to be half what the current intensity is right now. I also know that the loudness is equal to 10 log of the initial intensity over I/O. And that's just our given for when we're looking at sound. And I know that the second loudness, what I want it to be, is also, we're going to use the same equation, except it's I2. And I know that I need to separate these out. So I'm going to have L1 minus L2, which is what I'm looking for, right? And I have 10 log of I1 over I sub 0 minus 10 log of I2 over I sub 0. So this is my decrease in the loudness. So up in this first equation, I've wrote an equation for I sub 2. So that's what I did here, is I substituted whatever I had up here for I sub 2 goes into wherever I sub 2 was in this equation. Okay, so I'm trying to get rid of some variables here. So now I go ahead and I substitute that in, and I can kind of continue to simplify. So that if I have this 0.5 up in the numerator, that's the same thing as 0.5 times I sub 1 over I sub 0. So here I see I've got multiplying, right, which is the product property, so I can go ahead and I can simplify and separate those out. This 10 has to stay out there, but see how I have my parentheses? The parentheses are where I can make sure that I'm mathematically still correct. And then I can go ahead and distribute, right, because I'm just multiplying this 10 times both of my terms inside here. And it's a negative 10. Remember, don't lose that negative sign. So there's my distributive property, and then I can combine my like terms. Well, I see that this right here is the same term as this, only I'm subtracting them, so those can both cancel out. So this is what I'm left with, is negative 10 log of 0.5, and I can put that in my calculator, and I come up with 3. So my answer would be that my decrease in loudness is about 3 decibels. So now here's the different homework that you're going to be working on. Some of these book problems, make sure you don't do all of them. You just need to work on some of the evens. And then there's one Khan Academy assignment for you to work on for this lesson as well. So let's go and look at our learning target and make sure that we can do this. So here's our thing. I can use the properties of logarithms to simplify expressions. So we're going to be using these properties, and make sure that you can go back and forth. And just the biggest thing is remembering when I'm adding, I can multiply, or when I multiply I can add, and subtraction goes with my division, and what I can do if I have an exponent. So once we have these properties figured out and being able to use them, we're going to be in a really good spot to continue.